Hello, beautiful ones. Welcome to another live exploration into the intuitive realm. We are going to be exploring portals and vortexes, how you can tell the difference, what each one does, and most importantly, we're going to be covering when they are helpful and when they are super not helpful, and how to safely work with them and what that means. Like what does it mean to work with portals and what does it mean to work with vortexes? I'm going to be telling you a bunch of stories about like real live sort of on the ground experiences that I have had in different places all over the world with portals, and also in sessions, moving, like removing vortexes that have attached to people. And I'm also going to be talking about how you move a vortex from one location on the earth to another, in case that because sometimes vortexes show up in the strangest places, and they can cause plants to not be able to grow. They can cause, a certain place either in your home or outside of your home that always feels uncomfortable. So we're going to be talking about all that stuff. It should be really fun. Okay, so I am Jenny Jo Allen. I am a clairvoyant medium. I have been working as a Reiki master for many years. I got my Reiki Master certificate in 2001. So it's been over 20 years. And I am a healer, but I also read the Akashic records. So I use all those tools in the sessions, and I'm clairvoyant, so that means that um, I see beyond the normal 3D realm. And I also work with crystals. Behind me have many crystals, and I work with crystals and crystal divination, reading crystals. I love doing little crystal readings for people. It was really fun. Crystals talk to me, and I really resonate with them. So I love sharing that magic too. Okay, so I am going to cover all of the questions that you have. If you have questions, pop them into the chat right now. Give me a little thumbs up and a love, click the love button so that I know that you're there. Go ahead and say hello to me, announce that you're there, and I will say hello back. Also, at the end of this video, I am going to be offering a very special flash sale offer in honor of the month of December, the winter solstice, and this time of needing to really go inward and nurture, and find that juicy oneness within ourselves. So you won't find this offer again, ever, unless I feel super generous again next year. We'll see. But anyway, stay tuned for that magic. Okay, so pop your questions into the chat and I will get to them at the end. I am going to be hold on, I just need to turn off my ringer. Oh my gosh, that would be so embarrassing. Okay, so all the portals and vortexes I've come across, not all of them, but some of the like most memorable stories that I have, I'm going to be sharing with you. And so let's just dive right in. What is the difference between a portal and a vortex? So when I posted this in the group, I had definitely a couple people chimed in with their understanding of what the difference is between a portal and a vortex. One of them was really, really close. Not all of what I have experienced, but really right aligned, right aligned. So nice job. So a portal is an opening. It's an opening through space, through time, or through dimensions. So when I say it's an opening, it can be an energetic opening, a spiritual opening, and sometimes portals can actually be windows. Um, and they can be windows of remote viewing as well. So there are lots of different kinds of portals. Um, and I've been to all different kinds of sacred sites all over the earth. And I have been to dolmens and standing stones and some really amazing places on the earth where there are energetic remnants of portals. Um, there were some really amazing ones in Peru. I've been to Stonehenge. I've been to, some of the sacred sites in Ireland and also in France, and like all over the world. And I love going to those kinds of sites. Um, so what do I mean by there were remnants? I will dive into that in just a moment. So, portal can be either a window or an actual opening, either energetic or spiritual. I have never seen an actual physical portal where you can physically transform your molecular structure and leave one realm and go into another. I haven't seen that. But also, I call doorways and windows portals too, because like actual windows, and actual doorways, because we go from one place and then we pass through this doorway or this portal and we go to someplace else. So that is, we can use doorways and windows as physical portals that we can set boundaries on. And oh my gosh, there's just so many things that you can do with portals. Portals are amazing. Also, there are some portals that are really downright scary, and they should be not interacted with and not messed with. Certainly, some of the interdimensional portals, like just opening that kind of thing willy-nilly, not a good idea. Not a good idea. But we'll dive deeper into that in just a minute. Okay, so on the other side is vortexes. So a vortex is a swirling energy that either draws you in or spits you out. So recently I did a whole video on my recent experience of going back to Port Townsend and having lived there for almost 30 years. That vortex felt like a big hug to me, and it always drew me in. And I even tried to move away twice. I tried to move away twice, and it just it was like lassoed me, pulled me back in, and I moved back there. One time it took me over a year. The other time it was only 3 months. So, and then just this last time I was there, I really recognized that the energy had shifted for me and that the vortex was spitting me out. So, vortexes, there are lots of different kinds. How big they are can sometimes dictate how powerful they are. Sometimes the smaller ones are very powerful. They can either be outdoors or indoors. They can be just a giant, like the Port Townsend vortex. I feel is giant. I could really feel it when I passed out of the vortex. I started giggling. It was a trip. All of a sudden, I was like, ha 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 ha, and I had been like so dark and like, rah, the whole time, and I just started giggling. I felt so much lighter being outside of the vortex. It was really trippy. So, I've helped move vortexes outside of, or, that were in-house or outside in the backyard. I've moved them, and there are ways to do that. And I'm going to cover a few of those experiences in a minute here. Okay, so one of the vortex, I'm going to tell you a few vortex stories first, and then we'll get into portals. But before we do that, I am going to say that there are times when portals and vortexes work together. And some people call those a vortal or a portex. It's kind of funny, but basically, it's when you utilize the energies of both in order to do specific certain kinds of work. So, yeah, so I'm going to tell you a really intense story about one of those that I used. Okay. So, the first story I'm going to tell you about the vortex that I moved inside of one of my clients' houses. I was at her house and we were doing some work in the house, like it was an old house that she had moved into, and she really just wanted to make sure that energetically it was all clean and everything was good. And so we were going through the house and all these different places, and I was coming down the stairs, and my feet just went out from under me, and I was like on the stairs. And I was like, what happened? And because, when you're in a stairwell, you're not looking for a vortex. I wasn't looking for a vortex. I just was like, whoop, it caught me. It caught me off guard. And my feet slipped out from under me. Luckily, I wasn't hurt. I had a little bruise on my elbow, I think. But I was like, what's going on there? And it was, you know how some stairs are kind of spirally? Go down a little bit, then there's a landing, you'll go down a little bit, and then there's a landing, and then you'll go down a little bit, and then there's the floor. And so that's what her stairwell was like. And so on the first landing coming from upstairs to downstairs, on that first landing there was a window. And this vortex was moving in the same way that the stairwell was moving. And so it caught me and pulled my feet out from under me. And here's the thing. Some people are more sensitive to these kinds of energies and other people are less sensitive to these kinds of energies. This was a very lightweight vortex. It was not strong, but she did say, oh, well, several people have fallen down those stairs. We don't wear socks on the stairs anymore. And so I was like, okay. So anyway, I was like feeling out this vortex and asking it what it wanted, why it was there, and how we could shift it so that it wasn't, you know, potentially harming the people that were living in the house. And it was totally benign. It was just a back eddy, kind of a swirl. It was just a swirl. And it was pretty gentle. So, anyway, right out that window that was right at that landing, there was this old bush of some sort. And the bush was like, I want the vortex. I want the vortex. I need more energy. And so I was like, oh, perfect. So I talked to the vortex, and the vortex was like, okay, yeah, I'm cool. I'm cool with that. And then, so I was like looking at what would happen if we moved the vortex to the outside of that window and let it sit in the bush. And what it looked like is that the vortex would want to come back to the stairs. So we had to find a way to create a boundary or create a little, a barrier. And so what came forward is this piece of rose quartz that could sit in the window and just soothe that vortex so that it wouldn't have to. Did I say a piece of vortex? I meant to say a piece of rose quartz. Did I say rose quartz? Sometimes my brain doesn't work properly when I'm straddling both realms. Hi, Nina. Hi, Mariposa. Hi, Holly. Yay. Okay, I'm so glad that you're here. Excellent. Um, so anyway, we put a little piece of rose quartz there after I moved the vortex out to that bush, and it looked nice and settled and happy. And that rose quartz is still sitting in the window today. And every time I go visit her, because we are also friends, she's not just a client, but she's also a friend. And so every time I go visit her, I just, take a quick peek and it's all good. So that was a great success. Another vortex that I moved was actually in the backyard of a friend of mine's house. And we were doing some work because she had this old shed that was kind of like, falling down. And she really wanted to um, rebuild it and make it into a she shed, like an artist studio kind of place. But there was this one corner that was just like, ugh, anytime we would go into the old shed, I mean, yeah, it was musty and gross and stuff like that, but there was this one corner that just kind of like everybody wanted to stay away from that one corner. And so I was like, oh, there's something funny going on here, but it's not located in the shed. So we went out and went out there. I was like, aha, there it is right there. And what it was is that there was this giant rock, and and it was creating, it was like it was anchoring this vortex, and the vortex was really big, and it came into the shed and right around in that part of the garden. And that part of the garden, like all of her plants, she had tried to plant stuff there and they didn't thrive. um, Weeds would grow, and there, it was just like a totally unmanageable spot in her backyard. And it always collected junk too. Like junk would just collect right there, like old, pots that weren't being used anymore, and, different junky stuff. Um, and so I was like, okay, well, would you like to move this? And she was like, oh my gosh, yes, please, let's move it. So we looked around at some different places, and and it became clear that it really actually didn't need to move very far, that it could just scooch over a bit so that it wasn't encroaching on the shed area, and that it was like tucked back behind this tree a little bit more. And that wasn't a place where she was going to try and plant anything anyway. And it wouldn't be affecting the energy of the shed. So we did that, and we moved the stone so that the stone would be right in the center of that vortex. And it looked like, as I was looking at it, it looked like there was something underneath the vortex too, something deeper underground. Either that was like an old outhouse spot, because this was another, like old 1800s home. And so, back then they just had outhouses out in the backyard. So it looked like there was something like that, like there was something like that underneath there. Um, and so I helped move that and put it into a new spot and talked to the vortex, and this is where you get to live now. You get to be happier because you're near this tree, and we're going to give you a rock and really anchor that in. So that was a really fun project, and her shed looks so amazing now. It's totally beautiful. It's unrecognizable, actually. So gorgeous. So gorgeous. Okay. So one more story about vortexes. I had a client recently who had a vortex actually attached to him. And he kept saying, I just feel like, there's this swirling energy. I just can't like get rid of it. And there were some bigger things that needed to be dealt with first. So that was kind of a little bit low on the priority list. So it was a few sessions in before I was like, okay, we can deal with this swirling energy thing now. Because in sessions, that's always the way that it works. The things that are the most important to deal with first are the ones that come up to the surface first. And then as we clear the things that are the most important, then sort of the underlying things can come up to the surface and then those can be cleared. That's why often, a single session just doesn't quite get it. If you've got some bigger stuff to work on, there are a couple reasons. One would be that there are layers of things that need to be released in order for you to really get down to the core of your energy, your soul purpose, and your right livelihood and your clarity. And then the other one is that when we live with things for a really long time, it affects the way that we think. It infiltrates our belief systems and our trauma reactions and all that kind of thing. So there's reinforcing that needs to happen of the new possibilities. So once things are released, then the brain really needs, our thought processes really need, and our energy systems really need that reinforcing of the positive forward motion and that reclaiming of our own personal inner power. And so, yeah, multiple sessions are usually what I recommend. Anyway, that was a little side note. But when we finally got to this one session, I was like, okay, let's deal with this swirling energy thing. And I was looking at it, I was like, whoa, that is a really powerful vortex. And it was an inner vortex, so it was pulling all this energy in, and then it was kind of going through this black hole in a way. It was like this um yeah, it was going into some kind of an inner pocket, and it was really kind of drawing his um conscious footing in this like physical reality that he was in, pulling that through so that it was confusing his ability to understand what was what, pick apart the different realities. Like, is this physical reality? What am I seeing? Like, there were a lot of things going on there. And having this vortex pulling all kinds of stuff, interdimensional and um, you know, oh my gosh, there was just like all this information that was coming through, and it was creating distortions in his reality. And so when we got that removed, and it was no easy process either, because it had a root that needed to be pulled out, and that root was connected to some past life stuff and also ancestral. So there were definitely some deep things going on there that was rooted into, but the original place that vortex came from was another person that he knew years and years ago, and that vortex had been with her, and it transferred onto him because he was a much more powerful anchor for it. Vortexes always need an anchor. They always need an anchor. So that's why when there was that vortex that was in the stairwell, it's like, where would you like to go? The plant was like, me, and the vortex was like, okay, it was a lightweight vortex, so a plant was fine. And then the crystal sort of gave it that shield. Nope, you're going to stay in the yard. And then with the vortex that was in the yard that we moved, it was anchored by something deeper under the ground, and then also a giant stone on top of that, like a big rock. So we had to move that in order to help the vortex stay anchored in the new location. We also put some other stones around it to kind of like give it a space, and it also delineated the vortex area. Right. So, yeah, vortexes need an anchor in order to be stabilized, in order to stay where they're put. So that was a really interesting one. And when we removed it, it needed a lot of work to get it off of him, out of this reality, and send it as an energy package back into the flow of light, because in the end, portals, vortexes, all of those things are made up of energy. Yes, they transform energy. Yes, they suck energy. Yes, they transport it or, transmute it in some way, but it's all energy. And so we were able to transport that into, with some helpers, into the eternal flow of light, and that worked. So let's talk a little bit about portals now. If you have any questions about vortexes, if you have any experiences that you want to share, pop that into the comments, and I will acknowledge that. Okay, so portals. Um, like I said, I've been to several sacred sites around the world that had the energetic remnants of a portal. And in Peru, there were so many, oh my gosh, so many sacred sites and with really big power. And the thing is that they were built like not that long ago, only maybe 500 years ago or something. So the energy was still pretty fresh in those sites. That's still pretty potent. Uh, but there were these incredible, I don't know what else to call them. They were windows. They would carve them out of the stone. And some of them had like a little bench where you could just crawl into it and sit in there and sit cross-legged and meditate in this sort of portal. And it was just like a window or a portal, but it was just stone on the other side. There wasn't like a door that, like a physical door that opened, but it was a representation of going into a higher plane and doing astral traveling and connecting with the cosmic forces. So portals can be lots of different things. I've also visited dolmens in Ireland, and it was kind of like a mound of stones with a small opening that you could potentially crawl into, but it was all like filled in with stones. And so a lot of these sort of portals in ancient sites are energetic, they're representative. They're not necessarily meant to actually go into physically. They're meant to hold an energy and open that consciousness or that clear connection with other dimensions, with other timelines, with you know the astral projection or astral travel into those space, time, or dimensions, or for remote viewing, like viewing other places. So really a lot of those ancient sites had those kinds of portals. I don't know about other kinds of portals that they may have had, because we're not alive during that time. Right now we're right here and we can feel the remnants of them. How did I feel the remnants of them? That's a good question. There is a vibrational energy, and over all the years of doing this work, I've become quite sensitive to all that kind of thing. So feeling the vibrational energy of opening, it feels like a heightening. It's not the same as anxiety. Anxiety is like this clenching almost, but the feeling is similar because the energy rises, but it rises with more space between the molecules. If you can understand what that, it's like a lightness, but it also has a buzzing aspect to it. It's really fascinating, really fascinating. So one of the portals that I opened, portals can be opened, they can be closed. They can be used as windows or as ways to release interdimensional beings that are attached to other people. That's some of the work that I do with portals when, when there's a demonic being or some other kind of interdimensional being or energy attached to somebody, then we can open a portal into back to where they came from by resonating with the original energy of that being. So there's a trick to all of that. And I don't recommend doing that if you don't really know what you're doing. If you don't have any training in that, it can be very tricky. If you open up portals into other dimensions, you can bet that there's probably something on the other side of that that could potentially come through. And, I don't like being fear-based, but these things happen accidentally. They can happen accidentally. Um, and the way to protect against that is with intention. And there are some very specific ways to use intention in order to protect yourself when you're doing that kind of interdimensional and spiritual work that taps into things that are not 100% benign. There are ways to do that where you're protecting yourself and staying safe. Okay, that is for a different time. That discussion, that's a whole big discussion. So as far as opening portals, you do that with intention. You protect yourself with intention. And there are some very specific ways to do that vibrationally. The one main thing that you need to remember is that whether or not you're aware of vulnerabilities that you have, those vulnerabilities may be there. And the law of attraction states that like energy attracts like energy. So if you have vulnerabilities that you're unaware of, that energy could attract something that you're not expecting and that you're not consciously and intentionally protecting yourself from. Right. There are ways to close all those loopholes, and that's not what this class is about. But we can explore that another time. All right. So helping demonic beings or interdimensional beings go back to where they came from. I mean, oh my gosh. Yeah, I've had lots and lots of experiences with that. One of them that I've talked about before is when I discovered that there were some reptilian beings that were watching me. And so, they were watching me through a portal window, basically. And at some point, it was almost like a reverse telescope. And at the end of that telescope, like right next to me, was this giant reptilian eye. I was like, what are you doing? It was so invasive. And I just had this instinctive desire to like poke it. It was very funny and very fun. And they were like, what? They were totally shocked. It was very funny. I was able to poke right through their little portal window that they were watching me. Yeah, so that was interesting. They don't watch me anymore. I'm no fun. They can't stay hidden and they really like to be hidden. They don't like to be seen. So sometimes reptilian beings will disguise themselves so that you think that they are a being of light. I've seen that for sure. Not fun. Okay, so portals, really interesting stuff. Not something to just willy-nilly open or close. Definitely get training on that before you start experimenting with opening portals. How do you tell if there's a portal? like I said, there's this feeling of like maybe it's a feeling of there's a window open, somebody's watching you, something like that. That can be the sign that that somebody's using a portal or that some entity is using a portal to to watch. And reptilian beings are often watchers. Um, Also, the feeling that when you're in a place, a sacred site that has an opening like that, it can feel kind of like this opening. It can feel like an opening, like the energy is getting thinner because there's more space between the molecules, and there's a possibility of passing through this consciousness portal and opening your mind. It's kind of like the way that people use hallucinogenics to open their mind to other, to expanded consciousness, except that this is done with energy. Yeah. Another portal, and this is the one that I was going to tell you about with that's called a Vortex or a Vortal. Some people call them a Vortal. It's a combination of a portal and a vortex. And this one, I was working with this woman who had a being of chaos attached to her, and it was just like it was all tangled up in her energy, and it was super super angry. It was just like 100% chaos. So in this, I had two guides that were with me for years, and what I had to do in order to remove this entity was to open a portal and put a vortex on it that acted like a black hole. It just sucked everything. It had to be super, super powerful in order to get this entity out of her energy system. And unfortunately, it was so powerful in the spiritual realm that I was watching as my guides were starting to be sucked into that. Fortunately, I was able to get the entity out and close that portal, and shut down the vortex before my guides got sucked in. But after that, they were like, done. We don't, you're too scary. They were like, we're retired. Bye. And I never got to work with them again. Well, that was sad. That was maybe like, I don't know, 5 years ago or more. 6, 7 years ago. I don't know. A long time ago. Anyway, I have new guides now, and it's all good. But but yeah, that was really intense. And this stuff is like seriously no joke. Um, I've said it before. I earn every penny. There's, yeah, a lot of skill involved and a lot of boundaries involved and a lot of really strong protection protocols involved in this work. So, anyway, have questions? Go ahead and pop them into the comments. Ooh, yeah. Nina says a person she met uses portals to manifest. What are my thoughts on that? Using portals to manifest? Interesting. Right. Ah, I see. Wow, almost feels like cheating. Like open a portal, grab what you want, and pull it into your world. Hmm. Just feeling that out for a sec. It's an interesting idea. Almost feels like you would be taking it from somebody, though, like manifesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. It feels more like taking than actually working everything into the most easy and prosperous flow for all. Hmm. I don't know. It's an interesting concept. Definitely an interesting concept. I think that you probably could do that with good intentions and clean and clear in order to speed up the process. But really, the process of manifestation should be super quick anyway. It depends on what resistance you have inside of yourself, how fast that all happens. Um, yeah. And really also, I don't know how that would really work because if you pulled stuff through a portal in order to bring it into your world, would that really align with your own vibrational energy? Like energy matches like energy. So would it attract to you? Would you be able to keep it if you did that? Those are questions that I have. Like, I don't know. I haven't tried that, but that's an interesting idea. An interesting idea. But there are some questions that I have about how well that would work in the long run. Hmm. Cool. Good question. Thanks. Thanks, Nina. Awesome. So where are we here? Yeah, the portal vortex. Really super powerful, strong, and potentially extremely scary. Yeah, I'm sure that there are some people who are just masters of that, and that's what they specialize in, and yay. Um, yeah, that one experience was really intense, and I don't normally, I don't make it a practice to use portals and vortexes in combination or even separately. I just use them when they come up and when they're needed. Um, I think it maybe creates distortions to, if you use those all the time, it seems like it could create some distortions in reality. Those are all thoughts that I'm having. I don't really know I don't have very specific opinions on that. And speaking of opinions, I much prefer ideas over beliefs. Because ideas can be changed. If some new information comes in, you can change an idea like that. If you have a belief about something and some new information comes in, you do everything that you can to make that new information fit into your belief. Am I right? Yeah. So, ideas over beliefs keeps everything fluid and flexible. So safety around vortexes. Vortexes need to have some kind of an anchor, and it's a good idea to have some training before you go off, like opening portals and moving vortexes. Because like that one person, it looked like my client who got it from that other person, it just jumped off of her and onto him because he had such a stronger energy for it to anchor to. Um, and she had picked up her vortex in Sedona. It looked like Sedona's full of them, lots of little ones and big ones. Um, yeah. And so, yeah, I would just say proceed with caution, be quite conscious and aware of what you're doing, and make sure that you have all of your protections and your boundaries in place and strong, and that you're nice and grounded, super grounded. Okay, and there are some tools that you can use in order to work with portals and vortexes. My favorite tools are dense crystals, like things that are really super heavy. I've used, is my, oh no, I don't have that. It's in a bin still. Um, I have a big piece of black tourmaline. Black tourmaline's really good for grounding, and it can, it's dense enough that it can hold the energy of a vortex, depending on what the nature of the vortex is. Other tools that you can use are, like I said, giant stones, like big stones, and then mostly what you're wanting to use is just your own intuitive clarity and knowing and asking lots of questions. Use your natural curiosity to ask what the portal needs. Ask what the vortex needs in order to shift it to something that is going to be easier for yourself or your client to live with. Yeah. Another thing that you can use are copper. Tesla technology tensor tools. I don't know if you've ever seen those. I have some really giant ones. I have some smaller ones too. I think I've sold them all though. Um, but the giant ones are big enough to like step all the way through and it can really just do an energy cleanse. But you can use those to open portals and close them. Um, and there may be some other tools out there that can do a similar thing. It just depends on how you resonate with the tool that you're using and what parameters you set up and what intentions you use and how strong those are and how aligned they are with your own boundaries and your own energies. Right. Good. Okay, any last questions for me? Aw, Nina, you're welcome. So here's the flash sale offer. You guys made it to the end of the video. Good job, yay. Love, love, love. Kiss, kiss, kiss. And I have a flash sale offer for you. And here it is. From now until the winter solstice, which is December 21st, 2022, I am offering single sessions for $197. Normally, my sessions are quite a bit more than that, but from now until December 21st, and they need to be booked this year. That's the thing. They have to be booked by the end of December, unless you want to get a series of 5 sessions or a series of 8 sessions. If you get one of those series, then not only will you get a way deeper discount than I was even giving before, but on top of that, you can carry those over into the new year, 2023. So the way to get a hold of that special flash sale discount is to text me flash sale. And the information on that is at the bottom of the description of this video. So go into the description. Also, if you have portals or vortexes in your life, or you suspect that you have something attached to you, if you need some help, click on that free chat link so that you can have a free consultation with me, 30 minutes free. We can talk about it and get down to the bottom of what's going on for you and what you're wanting to create in your life so that we can, flip whatever is not going right into all the things that you want to be going right in your life. And I can definitely help with that. I can help with all kinds of light worker business questions, how to get out of your psychic closet and step into your own brilliant limelight and start attracting all of the prosperity, all of the love, and all of the yummy, wonderful light work clients right straight to your door, right straight to your computer screen, wherever you want them to come. We can get those attracted to you right away. So let me know if you want to take advantage of that flash sale. Text me, flash sale. My phone number is right in there. And I totally adore you. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for coming and listening to this live presentation. And I will see you next time. Blessings, blessings. Lots of love. Have a super great day and a wonderful weekend.